Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's ClicData webinar. For today's webinar, we are talking about a few advanced data features on ClicData. Today's webinar is presented by myself. I head the operations out of North America, and along with me today, I have Nancy. Nancy is the data analyst with us. She has been with us for over a year, and she'll be talking about the advanced features as well. On today's agenda, we're going through five different topics. The first one, we'll be covering about data templates. Nancy will be talking about those. Then she'll take you to the data stream option or the module on ClicData. She'll be explaining what that module is. And once that is done, I'll be taking you through the connection broker, ClicData API, and how to use Zapier with your ClicData account. Let me hand it over to Nancy to get started with our data template module.
Thank you, Shri. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. Today, I'm going to be talking about data templates and data streams. To start off with a data template, so it's basically an option to optimize your work, data transformations, or any calculations that you would need. We have pre-built tables within ClicData, and we have a bunch of options that can help you optimize your work. So in ClicData, we can see that the data template is available under tables and views, and we recently renamed the data templates as marketplace table. So you can find it under, when you click the add new drop down, you can find it under there. Or if you happen to have like an empty folder that you have created, there will be like a display option over here where you can either select a new connection or a table, and you have something called template, so you can click on that as well. That is going to give you a pop-up that has different options which you can use for whatever your requirement is. So we have options like calendars or currency exchange rates, healthcare related data, platform related data, weather, and world. So I'm going to take you through a couple of scenarios that we can use these data templates. Our first scenario is using currency exchange rates. Let's take, for example, your company is a globally established company that um, for example, like deals, you have deals or marketing campaigns. So all these, the values that you are storing in your database has is in multiple currencies, as you can see from the picture, the image on the slide. So the first one is deals. You have currencies like USD, euro, CAD, etc., or marketing campaigns as well with multiple currencies. So this is where we can use currency exchange rates template. So when you use the currency exchange rates, you can it will give you a pop-up where you can specify what currency you want to convert to. It can be from USD to the target currency over here can be a multiple clickable options. You can add as many conversions you want, as many currency types you want. And the start date is, it can be a previous date, a historical date, or from today. So it's going to give you the real time currency exchange rate. And once you click select, and you can, it automatically imports a table that looks something like this. And you can use this table to either have it as a lookup and take these values into your view or your data flow, and use it in your source table where you want to do the conversion. This is a really cool way to quickly do a currency exchange with your data. Like this, let's see another use case where we're using data templates, that is calendars. Let's take, for example, you have a dashboard where you're creating tables like a drill down table or a pivot table, whatever tables it is, and you have date columns, or a date column that lists out all the dates, and then you have the appropriate columns next to it. So as you can see in the image, we have a couple of dates and you have a couple of amounts. But as you can see, it's not all the dates, it's just random dates. It's possible that your data is not capturing every day's data, rather it's only capturing whenever there's a value, it's only going to have that particular date. But from a dashboard standpoint, you want, if you want to make it a little more presentable, a little more cleaner by having all the dates in the column, that's where you can use calendars. So calendars data templates, we have options like hourly, daily, weekly, and monthly. So in this current example, I'm taking a daily calendar that can give you every day's date in the table form, and you can use that daily calendar to create a join. Just do a left join to take all the dates from your calendar, and then do a simple case statement to replace all the amount values with zero, because it's going to be empty when you do the join, and that would give you a much cleaner output. By doing so, it makes your dashboard also look a little more clearer. Then let's go to a next use case, which is platform activity. The platform activity has different options. This is more for you to give you an idea and keep track of how you're using the ClicData platform. So some of the options we have here is dashboard activities, binders, user logs, task logs, email activities. So you can just select one of them and just import that table. So you can see if you have your subscription has multiple users, then you can see what their activities are in the platform. You can see how much usage is happening in the ClicData platform. So that gives you a little bit of clarity on how much you are utilizing the platform. That's on data templates. The next I'll be talking about is data streams. Before I go into this, if you have any questions on data templates, please do put them on in the chat, and I will do my best to answer them. So
Nancy, we do
yeah.
have a few questions. Thanks a lot for explaining the data template. I think you presented a few great use cases. One is if your organization is handling multiple currency, how you can standardize it into one currency. The second being representation of dates on your dashboard, try to backfill missing dates. And the third use case was interesting, where you can start getting some analysis on how your end users are actually using the product. So the first question I have is, do you have any data templates today that support weather condition, which can show weather forecast for regions or anything like that?
Yes. So if I can go back to my slide here. So here, if you see some of the options, we have something called weather. So you can select that option, and so what happens is you can a pop-up appears, and you can put the city you want and the date you want, and that's going to give you the weather information. So we
Awesome.
have the option. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen some other clients using the weather templates specifically in a restaurant context, where
Right.
they would like to see what is the current weather and how did that impact the footfall in the restaurant. So I think it's a great tool to add to your dashboard if you're doing anything that's weather related, retail, restaurants, or stores analysis. The second question I have on this topic is, in case we need a new template to be added, and specifically here, I'm seeing that if they want a financial stock market template to be added to the portal, is that something they can do on their own?
That would not be possible to do it on your own unless you have that template as a table in your storage, and you connect to ClicData and you import it as a table. But if you want it as a data template, I would recommend you uh, get in touch with our support team, and we will open an engineering a ticket for this request, and we will try to come up with some solution that can to make sure that this template can be added to our list.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks a lot. So if you have any other suggestions or requests on templates that you see missing, please send a request to support@clickdata.com so that the support team can look into it and we can add those templates.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to jump into data streams. So data streams, the concept is, um, we have, for example, you have ClicData is connecting to your source, and we're pulling in the data into ClicData. We're doing some transformations, either a data flow, a view, or just custom tables, merges, fusions, and you have a lot of transformations happening within each of these modules, and you want a copy of that table in a different storage that you have access to. So that's where data stream comes into picture. So you can use data streams to make a copy of that table which you want into a desired output storage. So I'm going to show you how we can do this in ClicData. So in ClicData, if you look at the options, we have the option data streams in our menu. Once you click on this in the pop-up menu, you can select which table you want to make the copy. Once you do that, you get another pop-up where you can mention the destination or the type of connection you want to use, and where you want to make the copy. So for my example here, I'm going to destination in the properties and going to connections. So in connection, in the destination uh, place here, sorry, you can choose, I'm choosing Google Drive for my example. So this is a drop down menus, and you can choose what storage you want, and the connection has to be a connection that is existing within ClicData. For example, we're pulling data from, say, your SQL server into ClicData, and we're doing all this transformation, and you want to copy that data into, say, your Google Drive, but you have to have that Google Drive set up connection within ClicData, so that we are referencing that connection to make this data stream setup. So once you so in my example, I have set up a Google Drive connection, so I'm selecting my Google Drive connection. And the next is the file option. So once you go to the file option, here in the folder, you can select if you want to copy it in a folder in the Google Drive, so you can select that folder, or if you just want to copy it directly into Google Drive and not a particular folder, you can just select the parent Google Drive. And then some of the options I want to point out is, if the file exists, so we have three options here, which is overwrite the file, or move the existing file, or rename the existing file. So for my example, I'm just doing overwrite because it's the first time I'm doing, so I don't have a copy in Google Drive. And for the output options, we have different options like Excel, delimited text, JSON, and XML. So for my example here, I'm selecting Excel. So once I've made my selections, and I can just click save and run. So this is going to immediately make a copy in my Google Drive. So when I go to my Google Drive, I can see that file over there in the Excel format. And when I open it, I can see that the data has been successfully copied. So we have a bunch of options, that storage options that you can make the copy to. So we have different databases that we support this data stream. We have other storages and web stream as well. If you have any questions on data streams, please let me know, and I'll try to answer.
Thanks, Nancy. I think, yeah, that's a great feature that allows you to actually push data from
Yes.
ClicData to external tools. The first question I have on data stream is there a limit on how many data streams you can create on ClicData account?
Okay, so right now, as I had mentioned, we have four options, as the output. So there is some limits. For XML and JSON, we don't have any limit on like the number of rows you want to copy. Whereas like a delimited text, let's say for example a CSV file, there is a limit of 5 million rows, and for Excel there is a limit of 1 million row, because that is an Excel limitation. So that's what that would be the limit for the data stream.
And I have two more questions. So the next one is when you're using data stream, are there any account limits on how many times you can stream a particular data set? I'm guessing they're referring more to can I do it every minute? Can I do it every hour? Or
Yeah,
what is the
so
frequency I can
so
set?
that would depend on how you're setting up your refresh or your schedule. If you're putting this on a schedule, it's going to depend on that. So there's no limit on that.
Sounds good.
I mean,
And
the limit would be more of how much refreshes you have for your subscription, for your account.
I can take on the last question is about can we create a data stream from one big data account to another? Actually, you cannot create a data stream from one ClicData to another account, but you can do that by using ClicData's API. I will be talking about that in my section, so I'll be referring to ClicData's API. And I think if you want to send information from one account to another account, the API is probably the best way to do it. You can somewhat do it using ClicData if you have a dedicated account with us. With a dedicated account on ClicData, you have direct access to the SQL. So there could be a possibility of using SQL to send that information, but API is probably the best approach here. Okay, I'll move on to the next section. Thanks, Nancy. So the next one we're talking about is a data broker. So the connection broker on ClicData is really useful if, just to illustrate, let's say you have multiple databases and you need to execute a query, select star from customer on these multiple databases. One approach is you set up connections to each of these databases and one by one start executing the query and create 4 tables on ClicData. But the connection broker helps you to automate this entire process. Instead of you going to each table one by one, you can set up a connection broker on ClicData so that we automatically iterate through all your databases, execute the same query, and put the content of all the query into one single table. The way to set up a connection broker is once you access the connection screen on ClicData, you can click on Add New button at the very top. And on that small drop down, you have 2 options. Either you can set up a connection or you can set up a connection broker. To set up a connection broker, the first thing you need is make sure you have some connections set up on your ClicData account. For instance, here I have 2 SQL connections set up on the left screenshot at the very top. Then I set up a connection broker and I select the connection type as SQL. And once I do that, I choose what are the 2 connections that I want ClicData to iterate through and start pulling in the data together into one system. In terms of use cases, just so that you can relate it to your business and your scenario, one use case that I've come across is as a consultant, if you're managing a portfolio of clients, let's say me as a consultant, I'm managing all the clients in all lawyers, different lawyers. I know that for all of these clients, since I host the database, I have different databases for each of the client, but the table structure or the schema on the database is fairly the same. And if I need to import, let's say, a list of accounts and create a dashboard for that, I would have to go through each of this database and start doing select star from accounts and do it one at a time. But using a connection broker, I can just set up all the databases together, put them in a connection broker, and execute the query from a connection broker rather than a database. So this gives me some advantages like single deployment for all the clients. I don't have to spend time to go ahead and keep doing it for individual client. And another advantage I get is a single tabular data for all my clients. So when I'm creating a dashboard, I don't have to create individual dashboard for each client. I can create one dashboard that looks into all my clients' data, and using user parameters, when the clients log in, they only have access to their information. So it does have an advantage of saving time, saving effort, standardizing everything, and kind of setting up a templated approach that could help you deploy dashboards to individual clients more easily and also save time for your organization. The second use case I have come across using a connection broker is a parent, like a head branch and a sub branch kind of a setup. If there's a organization and they have a sister organization across different locations, then again using connection broker, they can connect to databases from organization, sub-organization 1, sub-organization 2, execute a single query on both these databases to get a single table on ClicData. What that gives them is the ability to compare different organizations on one single dashboard, and also aggregate the information on a company-wide basis so that they can see what's happening on an organizational level rather than individual organizations. So that's a little bit about the connection broker, which will really allow you to automate the process and avoid repetitive tasks, you can go ahead and set up a connection broker, run the same query on any number of databases. So I do have some questions on the connection broker, which I want to handle before we move on to the next section. So in terms of the first question I have is, what are the different types that the connection broker supports today? So let me go ahead and share my screen so I can just walk you through the different types. So under the connection broker, once you click on add new and set up the connection broker, you have different connection types. Today we support all databases. Along with the databases, we also support web services, FTP and HTTP. But if there are other scenarios that you come across or other connections that you think could benefit from this connection broker, do let us know, and we'll try to include those as well as supported connection types. The next question I have is in terms of the connection broker, is there any limits on how many times or what kind of queries you can run or what databases you can go through? So as such, there is no limit on your connection broker. You can set any number of connection brokers on your ClicData account. You can have it iterate through any number of databases on one connection broker. The only limits are in terms of what you have on your accounts, the storage size and the data refresh limit that you typically have. So if we go through 5 databases and execute one query for you, it's going to be 5 data refreshes on your account. So you just have to be cognizant of the fact of how many data refreshes you have to be under that limit. Okay, so the next section we're going to cover through is ClicData API. For those who are not familiar with API, just a quick, what does API typically do? So API is just a data layer that allows you to push and pull data from external applications in an automated fashion. So ClicData also supports an API where you can use ClicData's API to start developing external applications. And with the API, we support you to be able to connect to accounts, data, dashboards, connections. We have an entire list of documentations that we are going to provide you. We'll be sending out this presentation, so you have links to the documentation. But for today's demo, I do want to take up through a live scenario on how you can use the API and what are the different methods that you could do using ClicData's API. So in terms of the documentation, if you go to api.clicdata.com, this is where you have access to to the entire documentation on ClicData's API. You can see what are the different endpoints that we support, how we can get information for an account, or if you want information for a specific table on ClicData, how can you get rows? In order to set up an API, you typically need some sort of authentication. Most applications that you're going to connect to will ask you either to put in the authentication like API key or basic authorization. We support 4 authentication types. We support OAuth2 using authorization code, OAuth2 using client credentials, a basic authorization method, and an API key authorization method. In order to start using API on your ClicData account, the first thing you have to do is actually go to the API apps and set up a credential for yourself. So if you're using OAuth2 credential, then you select that. You start by giving a name. This is my test API. And you click save, and then you'll be presented with a client ID and client secret that you can start using on your external applications or wherever you're developing this API to get connected to ClicData. For today, I'm using a tool called as Postman, and I'm already inputted some information such as what is the access token URL, a client ID and a client secret that I've created on my account. And I have already gotten a token that I'll be using to run these commands. So once I have set up the authentication, I can do a few calls. For instance, I can do something like get account. And if I send this request, I can get information for my account. If I need to get a list of dashboards that I have on my account, I can go ahead and use the get dashboard endpoint. You can click send, and that will give me a list of all the dashboards that I have on this ClicData account. So imagine you developing something on your end, maybe a mobile app, and within that mobile app, you want to display a list of dashboards that the client has access to. API is the way to go. You can use API to create that mobile app and develop that list of dashboards that the client have access to. In case you want to send data to ClicData, so this is one use case that we come across more often than not. What if you want to do something, create a live dashboard? So ClicData does support refreshes every minute, but rather than ClicData going to your application and refreshing every minute, what if you want to send rows of data to ClicData whenever they are populated on your end? It can be done using the data endpoint. So there are a few endpoints here. I'm going to start off with this select endpoint. The select endpoint allows you to see the data that is content on a particular table. It does require some parameters, like what is the table ID that you want the information populated for. So I'm going to go ahead and get a table ID. So this is the table that I would like my information to be populated for. I get the table ID from the top. And once I put this table ID here and I click send, sorry, I need to change this. Oh, this is the default body. So I'm just going to get rid of the default body because I don't want any specific version. I just want the latest version. And right now it gives me that, okay, this particular table that you have supplied has 2 rows, and I can see that it matches to the 2 rows that I have on the screen. Now, if I need to insert a row out here, I have an option to send data to ClicData using the insert API endpoint. Same idea. I set up parameters. I give a table ID. And under the body, I start specifying what information do I want to send in. So here I'm sending 2 rows. The first row is just department test 1, John 1. And the second row is for department test 2, John 3. Once I use this URL and I click send, the rows get inserted on ClicData. And if I go back and I refresh this particular table, I would see that I have 2 more rows that are going to populate. Sorry, I'm just going to try to send this again. Somehow the rows are inserted, but I don't see it. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened, but I could see them before. Anyways, the rows get inserted on ClicData once you set this up and once you start inserting the rows to ClicData. So that's another use case using ClicData, where you can start inserting the rows on ClicData directly from an external application, and that will display some information to you. So that's a short demo on how to use ClicData's API and use cases on ClicData API. If there's any question at this stage on the API, feel free to go ahead and ask. I have just one question at this stage in terms of, is there any limit on the API? So yes, there is a limit on the API. For each subscription, we give you a set number of calls every month. So based on the subscription level, you have a limit like 5,000 calls each month. And as long as you don't hit that limit, you can continue to use ClicData's API. And if you need more API calls, you can talk with your account manager and they can go ahead and give you more information on that. So the next section we're going to go through is using Zapier with ClicData. For people who don't know about Zapier, Zapier is a tool, external third-party tool that allows you to create triggers. For instance, if something has happened on one application, I want to do something on a second application. And ClicData does integrate with Zapier. We have our own application on Zapier that you could use. Let's go ahead and get into a live demo of Zapier. So this is a Zapier account that I have on my side. And if you want to automate anything, so for this scenario, let's say if a particular row has been inserted on Google Sheet, I need to send that information to ClicData. So I can just start by searching here, send a row from Google Sheet to ClicData. And as soon as you type in, it will automatically generate a Zap for you. It will tell you what that action should be and the step one and step two. So we could see here the step one created is a new row has been updated on Google Sheet, and step two has been insert a row on ClicData. We support a few other triggers. So we'll go through the different triggers that we support. So here what I'm doing is the first step is a new row has been inserted on ClicData. So I go ahead and I actually set up my app. What happens when what's the event a new row has been updated or inserted on spreadsheet? I connect it to my Google Sheets account and I start setting up a trigger that I want the trigger to happen on this particular sheet that I have on my Google account, which is called as the Zapier example sheet. And from this sheet, if any column has been updated, I want to push information to ClicData. So if I click on test, I can start seeing here what rows I have. And that way I can relate that, okay, it's picking up the right sheet from Google and it's showing the right information. Once I have done that, I can choose an event for ClicData. What do you want to do on ClicData? There are two events. Either we can insert a row on ClicData or we can refresh a table. So you don't always have to send data. You can also say, okay, if something happens on application one, let's say a new lead has been generated on HubSpot, I want ClicData to go ahead and refresh my HubSpot information, refresh my opportunities information, or refresh some other information. So you can also set up automations based on events that are happening on a third-party application. Once I say insert row, the next step is connecting to your ClicData account. The very first time you're going to connect to your ClicData account is going to ask you to enter an API key. To get to an API key, you go to the API apps on ClicData, you click on add new, and this time use API key as an option. And just copy the API key that you get, place it on your Zapier account, and that's how you're connected to that particular ClicData account as well. Once the connection has been established, you can start setting up different actions. So here I'm trying to say, go to my Zapier example table on ClicData. So this is the table that I had already created. So that's the Zapier example table. And here you can see that the data from my API is now available here. And on this table, I have 4 different columns. So I have a department column, I have SP, year, and sales revenue. I want to pick this table, and from this table, I want to start picking on the department column. I want to take the field on the Google Sheet, which is titled as my department. On the SP column, I want to take the field from my Google Sheet that is titled as salesperson. And once I start setting up everything and continue, I can start seeing that, okay, every time now a row has been inserted on my Google Sheet, it is going to start pushing the data on ClicData. And it's a live thing. So anytime anything happens on my Google Sheet, it checks for that information and it starts pushing the information onto ClicData in that particular table. So that's one example of using Zapier, how you can automate the process from third-party applications without having to use API and start pushing data to ClicData row by row basis or a transactional basis. So I hope this gave you some ideas on using different advanced modules on ClicData, how you can use data templates, how you can use APIs, connection brokers, then data streaming options. So there's a lot more that you can do with on the data side on ClicData that probably you're not using today. And if you have any more questions as you start using these features, don't hesitate to reach out to us at support@clickdata.com, and our team can help you out with those. So thank you everyone for attending the webinar today. Thank you so much.